is that screen?
And why does it know everything?
It is a Bloomberg terminal. It tracks every market, every currency, every commodity on Earth in real time. It costs $24,000 a year per user. $24,000 to watch money move? 300,000 banks pay for it. Do the math. I should have been in information.
Good morning. Can I help you navigate the interface?
Young man, I built Standard Oil from nothing, controlled 40% of the world's oil supply, and was worth, in today's terms, approximately $400 billion. I do not need help with an interface.
The password is case sensitive.
Leave the password. Go away. My first observation: everything moves faster, and nothing is more stable. Capital flows across borders in milliseconds. A rumor in Tokyo moves a market in Frankfurt before the person who started it has finished their sentence. My first observation: they built everything we imagined and made it fragile. In my day, a pipeline was a pipeline. It took years to build and decades to break. Now they have built a financial system that can collapse on a Tuesday because someone in Connecticut made the wrong algorithm. Speed without structure is just expensive chaos. Who is the wealthiest man in the world currently? It changes weekly. Currently, a man who makes electric cars, owns a rocket company, and purchased the internet's largest argument platform for $44 billion, apparently on impulse. On impulse, the discipline of capital allocation has evolved considerably since our time, mostly downward. Here is what I want to understand. In our time, wealth was built. You found something valuable, extracted it, refined it, distributed it, and the accumulation was the result of that process. Is that still how it works? Partially. The top layer of modern wealth is built almost entirely from the appreciation of assets that were purchased with borrowed money at the right moment. The extraction still happens, but the great fortunes are made in the gap between the cost of capital and the return on it. The oil is still there, but the real money is in who finances the drilling. It was always going to end up being about the financing, wasn't it? It was always about the financing. You simply had enough oil that it didn't matter for a while.
Real wealth has weight. You can put it in a barrel. You can ship it, refine it, burn it, measure it. My fortune was built on something that existed in the ground before I found it, and will continue to exist as long as civilization needs energy. That is permanent value. Your barrel meant nothing without the capital that paid for the well, the refinery, the railroad, and the distribution network. I financed wars, railways, and sovereign governments for a century before you found your first drop of oil. The loan came before the barrel. It always does. Here is what most people do not understand about capital. Money is not a thing. It is a claim. A banknote is a promise. A bond is a promise with a schedule. A share is a promise with an argument attached. The entire financial system is a vast architecture of structured promises, and its stability depends entirely on whether enough people believe the promises simultaneously.
And when they stop believing?
1929, 2008, various smaller occasions in between. The belief fails periodically. This is not a flaw in the system. It is a feature. It is how the system corrects overextension. Painfully. For everyone, except the people who saw it coming. I built Standard Oil as a vertical monopoly. I controlled the wells, the pipelines, the refineries, the distribution. Every barrel of oil in America passed through something I owned. They called it a trust. Then they called it illegal. Then they broke it into 34 companies, each of which became enormously valuable. The breakup made me richer. I have always found this philosophically satisfying. The lesson being, if your monopoly is broken up and each piece is worth more than the whole, you did not build a monopoly. You built an undervalued conglomerate. The regulators did your asset management for you.
I have never described it that way before, but I find I cannot disagree.
The modern technology companies, they create something from nothing. Software, platforms, code that costs almost nothing to replicate and sells to 1 billion people. There are no barrels, no refineries, no railroads. Just an idea, repeated infinitely at near zero marginal cost. Does that constitute real wealth creation? Or is it a very large trick? It is real wealth creation of a new category. The marginal cost of the millionth copy of software is zero, but the value to the millionth user is not zero. The gap between cost and value, multiplied by 1 billion users, is where the fortune lives. It is structurally identical to banking. The cost of moving money is near zero. The value of moving it to the right place at the right time is enormous. So they built a pipeline, an invisible one, precisely. And unlike yours, it cannot be regulated by a man with a physical wrench. What did we understand that the modern builder of wealth has forgotten? Patience. We both built over decades. The compound effect of reinvested returns over 30 years is more powerful than any clever trade. The modern market measures itself quarterly. We measured ourselves generationally. That difference in time horizon is worth more than any strategy. I gave a dime to every person I met throughout my life, not from sentimentality, from the understanding that wealth circulates or it stagnates. Money that does not move is a barrel that does not ship. Eventually, it just sits there and rusts.
The central bank was my idea. Not literally mine, but the concept. A lender of last resort. A single institution that could stabilize the money supply and prevent bank runs from becoming civilizational collapses. I financed governments for a century because there was no such institution. They finally built it, and then they used it to print money indefinitely, bail out banks that made catastrophic decisions, and set interest rates at zero for 15 years, inflating asset prices beyond any rational connection to underlying value. Is that what you had in mind? The concept was sound. The execution has been creative. They took mortgages, loans on houses, and bundled thousands of them together into a single financial instrument, gave it a rating it did not deserve, sold it to pension funds around the world, and when the underlying mortgages defaulted, the entire structure collapsed simultaneously. This is remarkable. How did no one see it? Many people saw it. A small number bet against it and became very wealthy. The majority did not see it because the fees generated by assembling the instruments were so large that seeing it was financially inconvenient. This is the oldest story in finance. The incentive to ignore the risk is built into the structure that creates the risk, and then the government paid for the failure with money it created. Yes, the technical term is quantitative easing. The colloquial term is considerably more colorful. They broke up Standard Oil because it was too powerful. These banks were bailed out because they were too large to be allowed to fail. Can you explain the philosophical consistency of those two positions? There is none. Standard Oil produced a commodity. When it was broken up, the commodity continued to be produced by the pieces. A bank that fails does not produce a commodity. It destroys the trust that makes all other commerce possible. The bank is not the product. The bank is the plumbing. When the plumbing fails, every room in the house fails simultaneously. So the answer is, they should never have been allowed to become the plumbing? Correct. That ship sailed in approximately 1999 when they repealed the Glass-Steagall Act. But yes, correct.
The interest rate is the price of money. When a central bank sets the rate at zero, as the Federal Reserve did for much of the period between 2008 and 2022, it is saying money costs nothing. Borrow freely. The consequence is that every asset that can be purchased with borrowed money becomes overpriced. Stocks, property, art, vintage wine. The cost of free money is an economy where everything is expensive. In my time, money had a real cost. 6%, 8%. That cost forced discipline. If the return on your investment did not exceed the cost of the capital, you did not make the investment. This seems obvious. How did they lose this? They confused the medicine for the cure. Zero rates were emergency treatment for a crisis. They became the permanent policy of a generation. The patient is now dependent on the medication. Strip away everything: the derivatives, the structured products, the trading desks, the proprietary algorithms. What should a bank actually do? 3 things. Take deposits from people who have money and do not need it immediately. Lend to people who need money and can generate a return from it. And charge the difference, the spread, as the fee for making that connection. That is the entire business. Everything else is variation, elaboration, and in several notable cases, fraud. That sounds almost simple. It is completely simple. That is why it took 600 pages of financial regulation to make it complicated enough to require an investment bank.
So Bitcoin is a decentralized digital currency. No central bank, no government backing, no single point of control. It runs on a blockchain, which is a distributed ledger maintained simultaneously by thousands of computers worldwide. No one owns it, no one controls it. The math is the institution. Who backs it? The network. The consensus of the participants. So, faith. It is backed by faith. We had a word for that in the 19th century. We called it a prayer. Where is the oil? Every currency I have ever understood was backed by something physical. Gold, silver, a government with an army and a tax base. This currency is backed by mathematics and the collective belief of people on the internet. I have met the people on the internet. This does not reassure me. The dollar has not been backed by gold since 1971. It is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, which is backed by its ability to collect taxes, which is backed by its army. Every currency is ultimately backed by a monopoly on violence. Bitcoin is at least honest that it is backed by something more abstract. You are saying the dollar is also faith. I am saying everything beyond the gold coin is faith. We have always known this. We simply preferred not to say it in public. The blockchain itself, separate from Bitcoin, is genuinely interesting. A distributed ledger that cannot be altered, that records every transaction permanently and transparently, that requires no trusted intermediary to verify. My entire family business for 200 years was being the trusted intermediary. This technology makes the trusted intermediary structurally unnecessary. How do you feel about that? Professionally? Threatened. Intellectually? Fascinated. The ledger is the oldest financial technology in human history. Mesopotamian clay tablets, 3000 BC. The blockchain is the ledger finally made incorruptible. That is not nothing. That is in fact the most significant financial innovation since double-entry bookkeeping. The price went from $1 to $69,000, and back to $16,000, and up again. This is not a currency. A currency must be a stable store of value. This is a casino with better mathematics.
Every new asset class goes through a speculative phase before it finds its functional value. Railways in the 1840s, internet stocks in the 1990s. The speculation is the market's chaotic process of discovering what something is actually worth. It is destructive, irrational, and apparently unavoidable. The survivors of the speculation become the infrastructure of the next era. And the ones who bought at $69,000? They are the price the market pays for price discovery. Painful for them, informative for everyone else. I actually hold a significant position in Ethereum. The smart contract functionality creates an entirely new paradigm for... Young man, I once owned 40% of the American oil supply. I find your position less significant than you do.
We financed the Napoleonic Wars, both sides, simultaneously. Your smart contracts are interesting. Come back in 20 years when we know if they survived contact with a regulator. I'll leave the password on the table.
Strip everything away. Not the instruments, not the systems, not the technology. What is money? Actually, at its core, money is stored time. When you earn it, you are converting your hours, your irreplaceable, non-renewable hours, into a transferable claim on someone else's hours. The entire financial system is a mechanism for trading time across people, across distances, across generations. This is why inflation is not merely an economic inconvenience. It is a theft of the hours people have already spent. I never thought of it as stored time. Most people don't. That is why most people's relationship with money is more emotional than rational. I gave away half my fortune. Not from guilt, from the understanding that wealth without purpose is just accumulation. And accumulation without purpose is just a number getting larger. I built universities, funded medical research, established foundations. The Standard Oil fortune still operates in the world through the institutions it created. That is the only form of permanence available to a man with money. The Rothschild family financed railways across Europe, stabilized governments after wars, funded the purchase of the Suez Canal for Britain. Not from philanthropy, from the understanding that a stable world is a world where commerce is possible. And commerce is possible only where there is infrastructure, rule of law, and functioning states. Self-interest and public good are not opposites. In the long run, they are the same investment.
The modern billionaire optimizes for wealth accumulation with a speed and efficiency we could not have imagined. But the connection between the fortune and the world that produced it has been severed. They live in compounds, fly in private aircraft, hold assets in offshore structures, and pay tax rates lower than their assistants. They have extracted themselves from the civilization that made their wealth possible. This is not merely unjust. It is strategically foolish. A civilization that cannot maintain itself, cannot protect the assets built inside it.
I was the most hated man in America at the peak of my power. Standard Oil was broken up. My name was synonymous with predatory capitalism. And yet I built the University of Chicago, funded the eradication of hookworm in the American South, and established a public health infrastructure that saved millions of lives. The hatred and the contribution coexisted. The modern wealthy man wants the contribution without the accountability. He wants the university named after him and the tax bill forgiven. This is not how it works. This is not how it has ever worked.
If you could give one piece of financial wisdom to someone starting with nothing today, one principle, one truth that survived everything we have seen, what would it be?
Compound interest. Not as a trick, as a philosophy. The person who reinvests returns instead of consuming them does not merely accumulate wealth faster. They develop a different relationship with time. They begin to think in decades rather than quarters. And the person who thinks in decades makes different decisions in every domain of their life, not just the financial one. It is the closest thing to a guaranteed advantage that exists in an uncertain world. Mine is simpler. Never be the last to know. In finance, in politics, in any domain where information has value, the person who receives it first does not merely have an advantage. They have a different reality. Spend less on consumption and more on the quality of your information. Every great fortune in history, including ours, was built on knowing something relevant before the price reflected it.
The world has changed completely.
And nothing essential has changed at all. Capital still flows to where it is treated well. Production still requires financing, and financing still requires production. The person who creates value and keeps most of it will always outperform the person who creates value and gives most of it to intermediaries. This was true in 1890. It is true today. It will be true when the crypto boys' grandchildren are arguing about whatever replaces crypto. And this, money is a tool. The most powerful tool in the history of human civilization. More powerful than any army, any government, any technology. Because it is the mechanism by which human cooperation at scale becomes possible. A tool used wisely builds. A tool used carelessly destroys. A tool hoarded does neither. The question is never how much of it you have. The question is always what you build with it. We built imperfectly. We built consequentially. We hope you build better. The password is still on the table. Leave it. We will not need it. We are going to find someone who owns the company that makes the terminal. Now you are thinking correctly.